Alrighty, so welcome to our last event of the speaker series, this ACM's Breaking into Tech speaker series. As a non-CS major, this week we have a special guest from TeachLA, who is Austin, and he will be sharing his experiences with the rest of us. So if you haven't already, please check in. This just lets us know kind of like the demographics of our audience and kind of making sure that we are reaching into more diverse bubbles and kind of showing people of all majors that they can join ACM and be a part of this great tech community. That will be in the chat periodically, and we will be managing the chat as well for any other concerns and technical errors. Throughout the whole presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to drop it in chat, as both everyone on the back behind the scenes end will be monitoring the chat. But with that being said, I will now pass the mic to our moderator, Christina.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. So quickly to reiterate and reintroduce this initiative, again, ACM is not just for CS majors, and we really want to expand more diverse and welcome all those interested in tech, but it can be intimidating sometimes when you think that everyone seems to be a CS major. So again, this initiative is just a really great starting point for us to increase diversity as one of our core goals. So again, I'm Christina. I'll be the moderator tonight. I'm involved in ACM Hack, and I'm a second-year computer science and engineering major. So this initiative is actually really important to me because personally I came into UCLA as a non-CS major, and I wish I had the opportunity to attend an event like this last year when I was a freshman in order to hear about how interdisciplinary ACM and CS is. But yes, enough about me. Let's move into Austin. So please, Austin, introduce yourself, major, year, which ACM committee you're involved in, as well as what you do for ACM.
Yeah, so I'm Austin. I'm a first-year English and psychology student, minoring in ethnomusicology. I'm in TeachLA. I've been wanting to get into other ACM committees, but I haven't really had time or the mental facilities online to get involved in other committees. But currently in the fall, I was making slides for the Python video squad. And then as we sort of finished like getting the content out online, and we started like transitioning to film, I've been working on translations into Spanish. And yeah, that's it.
That's great. So how did you first become interested in tech?
So I guess you could say that, like, I don't know if there's like a main like gateway moment, I would say. A lot of my friends in high school were already sort of interested in tech. One of my friends, she was on the board of Girls Who Code, and she dragged me along because club attendance was low. And, you know, they had like good snacks there, and some of my other friends were in there. So I sort of just went along, and like I went to the meetings to eat cookies, you know, and talk to people. So I wasn't like too interested in tech at that point, but I was getting exposed to like pseudocoding and like the relevance of coding in other fields, and like how some people in like completely unrelated fields like fashion end up like in the computer science industry. So it was pretty interesting. And then that was my senior year. So graduating, when we were transitioning to online learning and all that stuff, like I was sort of interested in learning some coding myself and like actually understanding like besides pseudocoding, like what is actually going on and all that jazz. So I like learned through Coursera, like I think like Python course or two online. And then when it came to like applying it in real life, and like not just through a course, like I thought TeachLA would be a nice place to like review. Haven't really developed much from there. You know, we're sort of plateauing right now, but hopefully that changes over the summer. I've like talked to a few people about like resources to learn HTML and CSS to possibly work on a personal site for like just a personal project. But yes, I feel like I forgot the question and I didn't really answer it.
You're good. That was a great answer. You covered a lot, and there are so many. Yeah, there are so many. I feel like so many resources. You got it. Yeah. But yeah, so sort of segueing into the next question. So it was really nice to hear about how you first got involved in tech, but why did you decide to join ACM, or what piqued your interest in, I guess, becoming an officer for TeachLA?
Yeah. I think I just sort of went because, like, initially I sort of went because it was it seemed like one of the more welcoming CS sort of organizations online that didn't really seem like competitive, or, I mean, it can be rigorous if you want to make it rigorous, but like to me, like it sort of fit the more casual side of what I wanted to do, I guess, with tech. So that's why I joined. And then uh, I think I mostly stay though, even though like I haven't necessarily like developed my tech skills all that much while in ACM, mostly by fault of my own. Like I just haven't really made use of the resources that they have all too well. I feel it um, like it has a great community that I've sort of stayed for. There are great people that I've met, and that's why I really appreciate ACM. They've been really cool people. And yeah, even like outside of like a CS or tech context, they've been great people to talk to and hang out with.
Yeah, that's great, and I totally agree. So kind of moving into a little bit more of your major, I would love to hear about how do you think that your major, like either being, I don't know, the ethnomusicology part or the other aspects, like how do you think that influences the way that you think and just in general, but also, for example, when you teach or when you work on those slides or when you code in Python? Yeah, what are there any like big things that you've noticed that you think this certain way? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't necessarily know if it's tied to any revelation in like thinking in like my paradigms. I think that I mean it's definitely a bit more difficult, I feel like learning syntax and like the formalities of a coding language at times, mostly because I have like very limited experience. But I think while I was like working on slides back in the fall, it was fun to sort of think of like instruction or like the through line between like each segment of coding, like going from like thinking like just like simple printing to like operations to like all the way to like functions or lists that like you have like that you can have a through line, not just like building up an accumulation of skills, but also like a story that you could possibly tell. We sort of made up well, during that time, like we had this character called Michael the Bear, and it was fun to make up like example problems about him and like realize that I guess like technology, like it is valuable in itself. Like learning about it is valuable in itself, and it's a great skill to have. But there are also other ways that you can make it interesting and interactive, even if you don't necessarily recognize its inherent value in the first place.
That's really interesting. Yeah, so to go more in depth with that, I know you're an English major, so there is a lot of like overlap with, I guess, I just like in logic and also like pseudocode, all of that. Have you noticed, I guess, the logic that you have in like, I don't know, some of your like essays or that kind of stuff relating to code logic? Or I'm not sure if you've taken any CS or taken the CS classes yet, but I don't know, is there anything that you've noticed in that aspect?
I have not taken any CS classes yet, so I don't know like too much about formal logic in like when it pertains to coding. I do think that like the sort of step-by-step process and like the sort of like approaching like you sort of have to approach a problem in coding in I guess a more like it can be broad at times. Like I'm sure there are projects that like there are broad ways that you can approach a coding problem that I like, just haven't gotten to yet because again limited experience. But I think when it comes to like writing and how coding has influenced that, um, I think it has given me somewhat more of like a clarity in like how to approach the structure maybe of an essay. And I mean, I definitely think that academia, like academic writing, can be super windy and like you don't always like know exactly what someone is saying in a paper or like what the point is when an author is trying to say something, especially when the writing is older. So I feel like coding in a sense like does sort of help you distill things better into key ideas. And I mean, this isn't necessarily academic, but like I have like played around with I guess like syntax and typing in like my poetry workshop that I have to take as an operative. Like like we have like there's an exercise where our professor wanted us to like derive sort of like I guess like the language or like the jargon of a profession and like incorporate it into language and like an exercise. So I like played around with like brackets and quotes and like using lists and the syntax with tabbing to like make an exercise. It was a bad exercise, but you know what? She thought it was a rich and powerful exercise. So I was like, you know, I'll take what I can get. And I do think that like that's sort of just something about like being a writer, so to speak, though I don't really like identify myself as one, is that like when you write, like nothing is really safe from being written about. Like you sort of write about like the most banal or like the weirdest things that you don't really expect to write about. It just sort of happens. And you can't really guarantee anyone like, oh yeah, I'll definitely will not write about you or this certain experience. It just sort of like happens.
Yeah, that was really cool. That example you gave was very interesting. Wow. I guess similar. I'm very curious as to how you've seen like your experience, I guess, with Python and a little bit of like the TeachLA experience. How can you like give us like an example or like walk through your thought process almost and like say like writing an essay and like how that kind of logic of or and also as well as like the clarity that you mentioned, how does that fit in? Or like have you like had an experience where you're writing an essay and you're like, oh wow, like that totally is something that I would have done in coding or that sort of.
Yeah, I think something that has been really different about writing in a college academic setting versus like in high school when it's like the AP Lit test and you just sort of say whatever you want in your analysis and like hope it makes sense and that it feels like it's phrased well, is that especially in college, I feel like you really have to say what you mean in like a really clear but like precise and powerful way. And then throughout an essay, like you have to make sure that you're not saying the same thing over and over again, like i.e. you have to layer your ideas and make sure they like transition and develop on top of each other, which isn't something that you really worry about in like high school writing, I feel like, as much as you do now. And I think like I personally like I tell my TA like I'm a self-obfuscator. Like I write in a way that like sort of hides what I'm trying to say because I don't really know how to say what I want to say. And I like use the fewest amount of words possible to try to say what I want to say, which just makes it even more like mystical or like confusing. So I feel like with coding, you're like just like there's only one way to say it. And like it's super direct. And like you can't really there's not really any ambiguity when it comes to that. And like if you mess up like one, you mess up one colon and like nothing works. And I feel like that sort of precision and bluntness like has sort of helped me like try and develop and like distill my ideas in a more clear way when I approach writing. Like I've been outlining more because, you know, I can't do the whole AP Lit thing where I just like sort of like annotate and then I run with the essay for the rest of the time. Like I have to like take the time to like figure out the steps and like figure out how I want to layer the ideas and how I want to like develop from paragraph to paragraph and like what conclusion I want to reach before I start out. And I feel like that's something that like you sort of have to do in coding too. Like like you can't just like look at this problem and like guess and check sort of like you have to like sort of figure it out in your head before you try and do it. And like you have to realize like there are better ways of saying things or like doing things and alternatives. So I think that's sort of one way. I think it's especially relevant now because like I'm actually in my first like English like major class for the English major sort of. That's been a problem. Like my professors and Ts have said like, yeah, you need to work on clarifying and like being more direct. And I feel like with like a lot of STEM and especially CS, it's like there really isn't any leeway with like mincing words. Like you just have to say what you mean and like you just have to do it.
So that is very interesting. I really like haven't even made that connection before, but you're totally right. The directness of coding maybe, and I can like learn from this too. Like when I take, I guess, my GEs, which aren't as intense as your writing classes, but I should definitely take note because I also do the same. Yeah, so I guess I kind of want to bring it back a little bit to ACM now, but so how do you see yourself as a non-CS major kind of being an asset and contributing to not only ACM's mission, but also our mission to, or like also the diversity aspect of ACM?
Not really given that too much thought. I'm like trying to think of things to say. But I think like asset wise, I mean, I feel like in the same way that like I know that in a lot of other industries, right? Like in writing, like and whatnot, like even in research too, like there's always a need for like coders to like data scrap or to like fix the website or to like help with SEO. And I feel like the inverse is just as true. I mean, like, so I guess like a main example, like I was sort of interested actually in narrative writing in studio, but like I also like don't really have any creativity. That's something I'm still like trying to sort out. But I feel like in like ACM Studio would probably be like the best example of how like non-STEM or like non like CS majors sort of like can enter tech, because I remember I like ran the piece on Emily Pitcher's story, The Space in Between, which wasn't like directly ACM related, but like the team from that game sort of like was built up from that. And I remember one of the sources said, like, if you could drop a line about like how we need assets for games and how like we would love it if there were musicians or like writers or like narrative, like in like people who like build narratives into our games, that would be great. And I feel like that's sort of like one of the ways that non-CS majors have like been able to like prove their sort of like, I don't want to say prove their worth, but like show how valuable they can be in like CS spaces. Personally, I feel like my Spanish ability is actually really limited. So I'm sort of like, I sort of stopped there. But I believe that like, I think from like from a perspective of like someone like who doesn't really know like too much about tech, like this, I guess like this doesn't really apply much to me because I sort of already knew about it. But like, I mean, the sort of like lack of knowledge can be an asset in itself, I guess. Like if you're doing instructional material, like having someone else who like doesn't quite know like what you're trying to, like who doesn't like already have a full grasp of like an idea you're trying to instruct, like that can be a great person to run it by with. And again, like I think like just being in a space itself, like again, like for me, like writing, like ACM has provided like material for that. But like even like when you don't necessarily plan necessarily like a long-term career in tech or anything like that, like it can be just good knowledge to know. Like I know like at the Daily Bruin, like we do have like an online section, right? But like no one really interacts with them. Like the sections are pretty segregated. And I don't think like a lot of writers realize how much work and how like taxing running the online section for the Daily Bruin is. Because the online section always says like we're overworked. And I don't really feel like everyone knows how like truly overworked they are. And I think like if you know how like complicated and how complex the craft is of like coding and like maintaining things like websites, like it's much easier to like collaborate in an efficient manner and just like be more cognizant of like the difficulties that come with certain requests. And I think like that's one way of how like ACM has sort of like opened up my eyes. And I feel like I haven't necessarily given back as much per se as an asset, but I think it's just been, I hope like I've been a nice person, I guess. Like I feel like coding can also seem like a very insular thing. The CS community is like super nice. I've actually like met more CS people than I have English majors, which is like super weird. But also like we're English majors, so I'm sure everyone else is out reading or something. But I hope that just like having other people, yeah, like there to fill in the gaps in perspective, is enough of an asset. I don't know.
I definitely agree with that. A lot of the times, I feel like a lot of people get lost in like the CS or like tech lingo, and it can be hard when you're teaching someone for the first time. And it's hard to, you know, increase our diversity and our like reach in like UCLA beyond just CS when there is that physical limitation. So I strongly agree in that being a huge asset. So kind of segueing from this, like what advice do you have for ACM as a whole to be more diverse and like more open to non-CS majors, because that is the goal, but unfortunately we haven't been able to have or get as many non-CS majors yet. But yeah, just any advice that you have, I would love to hear. We would all love to hear.
Yeah. I don't know. It's difficult to I guess like spark interest that someone might not necessarily have in the first place, right? Like for me, like I already sort of had an interest prior, and like I feel like it's difficult to like if you're not in the right communities, I guess, or if like you might have a more, I guess, like closed off experience with your life, I guess. It can be difficult to like realize how like just how overwhelming like the presence of technology is in like life and also like in culture and like just like in job prospects and whatnot. And I feel like it's difficult because like it's like a closed loop, right? Like you want to generate interest in this community that doesn't necessarily have interest in the first place, right? So I mean, the best way to do that would be like to show the relevance of tech in lives, right? But then like to get their foot in the door, again, they would already have to have that interest. So it just like feeds onto itself. It's like a like what is it called? Like a Euroboro, like the self-eating like serpent. So it's difficult, I think. And I feel like the fact like to me what was really nice was the constant iterated reminder was of like saying like this is like a space for like everyone, like you don't have to be a CS major. Like I remember seeing that a lot on the posts when like what was it, I'm just the first year, so I don't even remember like the general club form thingy on Instagram, like the giant activity fair, I think, or whatever. And I think that was really nice, but it's just like difficult to say to like to get someone to realize how big of a role tech plays. I feel like if they're not actively seeing that, like for me, like even if I feel like even if I didn't personally like have those friends around me who were involved in tech, like tech plays a really big role in the industry I might want to break in, which is like journalism, and how like a lot of freelancers that I see like online right now, like they're all talking about like the role tech plays on like the music industry, right? And how like TikTok and like Spotify and like the streaming algorithm like has an influence on like taste and the way people cultivate culture currently, and like the revival of like punk bands and whatnot. So like I feel like it's just difficult to like know to like yeah like show relevance in so like some people who might not see it, because I feel like that's sort of how like the school system like raises us, like we're taught to think like these subjects are like separate from each other and compartmentalized, and that they don't really have any overlap when they do to a certain extent. So I think it's like an ongoing, I feel like a philosopher. I'm just like, it's an ongoing question about like how we do this and how we, like, how can we prove that like this is something that's like worth like the attention of other majors? Because I do think like it is worth the attention of like everyone. Like I feel like, again, like having knowledge of like technology is like really like sort of like the bare minimum that you can ask for in a person like in like such a tech saturated era. um and again like especially for like literacy online. But yeah, I don't know, I'm just yeah, I'm more like a philosopher. I'm like, I don't know, like we can like talk about the pros and cons, but like I don't really know what to do.
Okay, no, that was great. You brought up some really interesting points, and especially about like that kind of, you know, the I don't remember the exact reference you made. I was going to say like circular dependency, but like Kalia said, it's a very English major reference. Yeah, but so quickly before we get into some of these questions in the chat, I was wondering like, I know you kind of said you weren't too sure about this yet, but how do you recommend branching into these communities? So like, do you think having events like this, or maybe like I don't know, like Facebook groups? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because like again, like I haven't personally been on campus or anything, and I've only been here for like a year, and I don't really know how like other majors operate. But like the thing about a lot of, I feel like, humanities majors are like they're sort of all dependent, like they all sort of feel like independent of each other. And like you can like there's so much leeway within like one major that like you feel like that's enough like roaming space, and you don't really feel like the need to branch out. Like I know like the ethnomusicology and musicology major, like they have their own Slack channel, and I feel like they get all their information from there, and it's all very sort of like insular, I guess. And like it's hard to like get people to like come out of their like resting zone. I feel like it's the same thing with English. Like we have a listserv, and like we sort of get like all of our information from events there, but it's difficult to uh it's difficult to like find other means of communicating with like non-CS majors through other means besides like finding like pinpointing exactly like the way that most students in said major get their information. So I feel like events like these it's difficult to like publicize it and grab the attention of people again who like haven't already been invested in tech, or who have personal ties to the speaker. Thank you, Python Video Squad and Malin, for coming. But I think like, yeah, I feel like it'd just be a lot of time to like tailor or like find exactly like how like one like sort of like how the department like interacts with its students and like utilizing said channel to like publicize events, because I feel like the mere exposure of it and like knowing that it's there already does a lot of the footwork for you. And I feel like, yeah, like exposure is just something really hard. Like I'm in the lit journal too, and we're all membership is short this year, so we're also trying to figure out like how do we publicize this, and like how do we expand membership, and we're all hoping that it's sort of like an online sort of deal, and it's like difficult to like even know that like the lit journal exists. Like people, I think a lot of people have said like on like my like the poetry editor has also said like, yeah, like I tell people about West Bend and they don't even know that UCLA has a lit journal, and I feel like you can say that about any club. So it's just, yeah, it's difficult to just like tap into channels that are relevant to other majors, I feel like, because they're all so different.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed hearing your perspective on just this. And, you know, this in itself, again, is like another asset that like non-CS majors bring. Just that alternative perspective has been really eye-opening just for me right now as well. So I'm going to quickly go to the chat questions. And I think Halia asked a really good question about how do you feel being the only humanities majors within a lot of your circles, and one of them being ACM?
I feel like I don't necessarily feel out of place because like I already know people, and the people at ACM have been really kind and really welcoming. I feel like it's a very lucky thing to just have I don't want to say like a dramaless community, but a community that doesn't necessarily feel like hindered by like just by the fact that I am a humanities major. I mean, it's sort of become my brand nowadays. Like if I don't know something in tech, I'll just be like, is that a CS thing, or is that like not a CS thing that I'm just unaware of? But I think it's I wouldn't necessarily call it unnerving or like disconcerting. I definitely think that it just, it's like when you have high school friends and like you know that you're all going to major in different things, like it doesn't really matter like that you have those different interests. It just sort of like you're just there. And if like the people that you surround yourself with are like they don't make a point of it, or at least like in my experience, like they don't make a point of me like being a humanities major, like that's not the end of the world, or like that doesn't define like the relationships that I've made. So I think it's not a bad thing. It's just the same as like, I guess, yeah, just like regular friendships where you have different interests.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess with ACM, how do you think like your experience so far in TeachLA, has it helped you at all in your major? So specific, or like maybe in your clubs or with like job recruitment at all? Has ACM benefited you in like the humanities aspect of your life?
Yeah, so that's a work in progress, I feel like. Just because my humanities life just needs some more development as well. I would say that, I mean, like, I guess I would say that I think it like the essay thing is one thing.
Okay.
And I think that like another thing that I'm sort of learning is that like, again, as I said, like the inextricability of like tech from like other industries, right? So like I just started looking at like internships over the summer that I'm pretty sure I'm all gonna get rejected from, which I actually have gotten rejected from one already. So that's great to hear that we're like done with that. But like I look at like some sites that I'm interested in writing for, possibly, and like they've said that like, oh, it would be nice to have like prior experience in HTML. you know, it's not required or like it's preferred, right? So it's like the more and more I learn about like how relevant tech is in these industries, and even when it's not necessarily an explicit sort of like relevance, I do know like writers who can like incorporate tech into their writing and like use that as an angle. Like I don't know if anyone's a fan of Ariana Grande here, but like in the 3435 music video, I believe there was like she's like a scientist, right? She plays a scientist and she's like reanimating this person. She's reanimating herself. And like there's this like one little snippet where like there's this like cup moving around in this microwave and it has like all this coding around it. And like a writer I knew actually identified it. She was like, oh yeah, this coding is actually from a Tumblr blog that like posts pseudocoding from movies. And I was like, oh, how did you know that? So I think it's like I think it definitely has been helpful in like giving me resources. Like I've talked to people about like what would be the best place to learn HTML, right? And I think that like like having that door open is just it's really nice to like be able to like walk in and out. Like I'm not like a tech person like all day, right? But it's nice to know like that space is there if I need it, which I certainly do. And like hopefully if my writing improves, and that'll be also like a way that it grows, like just again like learning knowledge that I can tap into later. So yeah, I think that's another way that it sort of helped me.
So kind of as you're exploring this intersection, what have you noticed that, or besides beyond just that, like how the music as well as journalism or writing has changed because of tech, especially in the last like couple years as you've been more cognizant of how tech and everything has been changing together?
Yeah, this is a great question that I I started like trying to read more publications like frequently, like the summer before my senior year when like college apps were coming up, because I think Columbia and a few other places had a question like, please name like 5 publications that you read daily or like weekly. And like me being like someone who's like completely out of touch with like the world, I was like, I don't know like any, like I don't read daily. Like I'm just on my phone like on social media. Like I didn't know I was supposed to be like using this for educational purposes. um so I started reading a lot more. Now it's more on and off just because of schoolwork, just like in general about music and stuff like then. And there like some like a really controversial, I guess you could say, like topic is just like the role tech plays in music, right? And it's like for me, like my introduction to it, I'm like there have been plenty of think pieces probably about like the move from like vinyl to CD to MP3s and like the streaming industry and whatnot that I haven't quite got to. But like for me, like one of the main things that sort of like woke me up was I think Grimes, she just started dating Elon Musk, right? And Elon Musk is Elon Musk is Elon Musk. So he's just controversial. And I think she said something like, oh, there'll come a day, this was on like Twitter, like she's like, there'll come a day when like machines will be able to write and produce better than like human beings. And of course, people were like, "What? What is she saying? What? Like this doesn't make sense. Like art is human form. Like how can a computer do it better?" And like there's just a lot of pushback about like this is her like sort of being a Silicon Valley fascist. Like she's just like imposing tech on everything, and like trying to like prove the superiority of computers. And of course, she's doing this because she's Elon Musk adjacent and whatnot. And it's interesting because like there are like programs already in sites that have like replicated human work. Like I think there's this site called the Jukebox AI, and like I've seen writers reference it saying like, yeah, this could have just been like a Jukebox AI Maroon 5 song. Like this could have been a like computer program song. Like they just like iterated again. And then there are like so many pieces where the angle is about tech as well. Like talking about like algorithm panic, or like because like tastes and streaming platforms are so defined by like getting into a certain playlist because of X algorithm. Like there's this big idea that like the music industry, like previously, like you talk about sellouts and stuff, right? And how like people sell out into major labels. And now it's all about like you sell out to the algorithm. Like you sort of have to play into the algorithm and what listeners want through there to get your music publicized and stuff. So I feel like more and more like you see tech getting not necessarily like the main spotlight, but I think it's just becoming a constantly ingrained angle into music and just like culture at large. Like even without like the whole music angle, like people talk about TikTok and how that influences culture. There was this I believe it was Harper's Magazine piece that my friend sent me, where the author just talked about like regardless of whether like you're a teacher like receiving feedback from an evaluation form, or like this music artist, or like an influencer, like you all bow down to the algorithm. Like you all have to like you all sort of like put yourself in front of this like complete like of like this technological world and sort of like hope for the best. So that was a long answer, sorry about that, but I think that's sort of like one way that I see like tech has just been like slowly becoming this like really really heavy angle that people have been leaning into more recently, like deservedly so. But I do not want to see another TikTok trend piece personally.
No, I really liked your answer. And personally, I'm like a victim of just thinking of everything from a tech and Silicon Valley aspect. So what you've brought up is actually really eye-opening. And so like using that, like, have you ever noticed like in ACM where like you may have brought up an idea and and then someone who's a CS major coming with a CS point of view that they never would have thought of it? Or has there been a moment like that before?
Feel like it's like I don't contribute much to meetings, so I feel like that hasn't really happened that much. Um, I again like I've been pretty casual with my involvement, and I feel like that's one of the main reasons. Um, but I would like to hope that like I don't quite know. I mean, it's difficult to know unless they like say it out loud, right? But I would like hope that like the same way that like non-tech students like learn so much from ACM students, that like that like CS students in ACM like sort of do the same, even if it's not necessarily verbalized. Um, yeah, I feel like as far as it pertains into like a strict tech or CS context, I feel like that hasn't necessarily been explicitly said to me. But I'm sure that like again, like there have been so many I don't sorry, walking that back, I feel like they're like the people in HCM, regardless of whether you're a CS major or not, have like so much personality and character and depth and like knowledge to them that I feel like you can't really talk to someone without like learning something that'll change your perspective, I feel like.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I saw this really good question in the chat. So as you are like learning technical skills yourself, as well as teaching them and preparing like teaching materials, like you mentioned with the Python video and like making the slides, have there been any moments that challenged you that you brought over to TeachLA where you made sure that you on the teaching side like made sure to address it for other people learning the same skills? If that I don't know if that was phrased poorly, but does that make sense?
Yeah, sorry, that was my father's making gestures
No.
at me. But you know that was good phrasing. I think the great thing about TeachLA is that there are so many prepared CS students. I think that like yeah, the dev team is so thorough, Nikhil. And the person I worked with at Faith, he's amazing. Like these people are so on top of it. So I feel like there hasn't really been any case like that. I think off the top of my head, like I think there was like I don't think it was necessarily a difficult topic for me, but it was like one that I realized that we were sort of missing. Like I think like when we were like going through the curriculum, I realized that I think either Advaith, I think Advaith probably realized before I did, but like that we were missing like the topic on input. And like input is just like the main, like I feel like it's one of the more interesting topics of like the first block of like learning Python because it's like one of the main ways that like you have the user like inputting information. So or, like just putting in and interacting with like the code itself. So I think like that was maybe like one of the very rare instances where I feel like I like sort of like my personal experience sort of benefited, I guess, and was an asset to the coding like with the instruction for Python then.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, just like your ulterior or the additional perspective you bring in itself is just so valuable. So, and like even like as a hack officer, us like teaching, I don't know, mobile development, web development, we could really use like that kind of perspective to help students learn more about, you know, web development or whatever the topic may be. So thank you. I'm going to ask another question from the chat. I think some of these are really good. So kind of going back into TeachLA, what, if you didn't join TeachLA in the fall, what committee would you have joined? Or, I mean, now you could still join as many committees as you want, as I have also done, but I don't know, what else are you interested in ACM?
Yeah, I think I probably would have tried joining like this, like if I went like this entire time not having joined TeachLA, I feel like I'm like slowly starting to realize that it's really difficult to just be right. Like you have to know like a lot of internships, they want you to know other things like how to make graphics and how to do like other visual things that I am just not well acquainted with. Like if you ask me to draw a hand that wasn't a stick figure, I would extremely struggle. So I think possibly design, just because like yeah, I feel like the visual thing is something I just have to work on myself. Um, or possibly hack, I think, because there's been so many, like I've seen so many hack workshops that have been like, yeah, that'd be really relevant to me. And then I just like do not have the time to go right now. So I feel like, yeah, either hack or design would probably be like my main sort of ones that I feel like would be most interesting to me.
Yes, I mean, I will vouch for hack. We have some good workshops. You should definitely. And we also have really great resources for learning like web dev if you're interested at all. Yes, I second what in the chat. Yeah, so I also are, again, another really cool question in the chat that Crystal asked. Is there anything that you would have told yourself at the start of the year when you were applying to ACM, and anything that you would have told or would have wanted to prep for to start learning earlier now that you are fully like in the tech space?
I don't think so. I think mainly just because, like, not necessarily because I was prepared at all. I didn't just because like at least the way that like TeachLA is set up, it's been really easy to like, I hate this idiom, but like to dip your toes in the water, right? And like take the dive in and whatnot. And just I guess sort of like trust yourself in the process. I think that like yeah, like TeachLA has been really welcoming. They had like icebreakers at the beginning, and they had like pedagogical like activities that sort of like help like that one, were like interesting and interactive and also relevant to like the actual delivery of the content, but also just like that like made it easy to break down concepts in a way that wasn't like so insular and like solely based off of tech, and like try like incorporating in like other elements or like analogies that made it easy to understand. So I feel like uh I don't like, I think at least in the sense that like with TeachLA, like I don't think that I necessarily would have needed anything else from like starting off.
Yeah, no, that's really cool to hear. So kind of moving forward, I know you mentioned that you want to learn more web dev, like HTML. Is there any other areas of tech that you want to break into during your 4 years here, but also beyond?
Yeah. Again, I don't necessarily think I have the narrative chops to do CDO, but like I think it's just so interesting, like how like 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 I guess I can't really think about narrative when you play a game. You just like look at the graphics and you enjoy it. But I think it would be super fun to try and do that. But like I can barely write a short story as it stands, so I don't really know if like an entire game is in my hand. Like I stick to the short poems. Like that's enough for me. That's all the creativity I have usually. But I think that would be really cool avenue to go down. Again, yeah, I think web dev is definitely up there, and that's something that we need to start this summer. I actually have a few hack videos that I was planning to watch, but I think design would be nice. Again, just because of that visual aspect. I think like when I think everything was in the study room chat, or it might have not been, but like I think Crystal sent this like snapshot of a slide where like it was like the bullet points are right aligned, and then like the letters are different sizes and different colors, and then like it was just like an aesthetic mess, and I was just like, oh, like that's something like I would want to avoid if I'm like giving a presentation, or like just like anything but that, or like making a flyer. So I feel like design would be another like nice area that I want to sort of get experience in, if not for me to use for myself, like at least to know like the best way to catch your eye or something if I was publicizing something.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of, yeah, again, looking forward, would you ever, I know you mentioned before you're considering a career in journalism. Would you ever consider a career in tech, or yeah?
I think that's definitely, I'm a very like, I want to do everything sort of person, and I hate choosing, and I'm indecisive. Like before I wanted to be an English major, like I was seriously debating like like maybe I want to be a chem major, and then like that's like just like the complete opposite of English, and like, no one really like I know like probably like one other person who was like similar to me who like maybe could have majored in physics, but now they're an English major too. So I think that, yeah, I'll put on my philosophy cap. Like I think it's an open question of like me entering tech. I feel like if I were to enter tech, it would probably be in like, yeah, possibly like a journalistic capacity still. But I think that like, I mean, like, there's so much like tech journalism and so much like tech x other industry journalism. Like I know there used to be a Substack, I think, called Water in Music that was like solely related to like breaking down technology's role in music, and like vis-a-vis like Spotify and like streaming industry and like other things. And then I feel like that I think that's now like its own site now. And then there's also like tech journalism, like websites that are solely dedicated to tech journalism, like The Information. And I think it's just there's so much going on in the industry, and like it is a really rich industry, and I feel like I'm still sort of figuring out, I don't know if my like passions either, because I do think that like music is sort of like where like I sort of want to be involved tangentially somehow, but I do think like tech is interesting, like, again, just because of how big of a role it plays in our lives. And it's just this like thing that's like rising out of the ground, and like we don't really know how to control it. And it seems to like foreign to like people, or like not foreign, but I guess it just seems to like over like when you really think about it, it's just like so overwhelming how much of an influence it has in our lives. And I think it's just interesting to like poke and prod at it with like journalism and like other avenues.
Yes, you're so right. And you have so much time to explore. I mean, you're only a freshman now, but also in the future to explore all the intersections as well as tech itself. So I'm going to ask one last question before Crystal makes any closing remarks, but just what have been your favorite memories of ACM so far, or maybe specific experiences where you're like, wow, CS is cool, tech is cool, and also that made you realize that, or made you realize like you didn't really regret anything from joining a tech club, which is so different from kind of your original plan?
It's so hard. Let's see. I feel like there have been so many moments like that. It's hard to choose just one. Like when I found out about when I found out about Emily Pitcher's game with like the space in between, I was like, that's so cool. It's so romantic. Like, I don't know if you know the premise, but it's like just like this like girl and this guy, and they go stargazing, and like she crafted a narrative game out of that. And I was just like, that's so romantic. Like that's so dumb and cute, right? And like I'm like, wow. And then I think I was able to go to the first hack web dev workshop, I think, when you guys were just doing like bare HTML, and it was just like the white page and like making the file and like having the body and the header and like editing the colors. And to me, I was like, it's that easy? Like what? I think that was another moment for me. And then I think like when it comes to TeachLA, I think just like the amount of activities that we did in like before like going out into breakout rooms, and like I mean like the mission itself of TeachLA is just like so, it's something that like you can't really like not have a passion for, like teaching small kids like how to code, like that's adorable. And I think that's like super necessary for like literacy, and like just like being cognizant of like your surroundings as you grow up. But I like there have been so many activities where like the the TeachLA board like just finds the most disparate threads to like link it to coding. And I think that's just another thing. It's like it's really interesting how like a lot of the stuff that we like know, like that like people learning coding is like sometimes like that can be stuff that you sort of like already have a familiarity with, like the process of doing lists, or like the process of doing functions, like comparing it to like recipe books or like chocolate chip cookies and stuff. And like TeachLA is just also just so full of personality. It's like really hard to like not want to be involved with the subcommittee. So yeah, I feel like there have been so many. I don't know if there's been like just there's just been like one like main one, but there have been definitely like little pockets of just like, wow, like I like sort of want to do this more.
Yeah, that's really cool. And yeah, there definitely does not have to be a big moment. Just I think it's the accumulation of all the small ones that make it even that much better. So thank you so much, Austin. I absolutely loved hearing your experiences. And again, having a mostly like CS perspective, I can say, I'm sure I can say this for most people too, but this was extremely eye-opening. And thank you again. Crystal, is there anything you wanted to add?
Just like a thank you to everyone who's come to this speaker series event. It's nice to see support for the non-CS community within the CS space, because I know like we are a minority within the space, and it's nice to both kind of like meet each other and lean on each other, but also like learn from each other and realize that it's not like an impossible thing to like break into a tech space as someone who is not CS at all or has like little to no experience. So we really welcome that, and hopefully this series has showed everyone that, you know, like ACM is a welcoming tech space, and we hope to see a lot more non-CS and more diverse faces at our events in the future. But with that being said, I won't hold anyone much longer at the event. So happy week 9 and good luck on finals, everyone. We'll see you guys hopefully next school year.